I have pushed the YouTube Live button. For those of you that have been sitting out there on YouTube waiting for us to start, apologize. We've had many technical difficulties. And now I'm going to go pick up the YouTube link. And go share it over to Facebook. And we don't know how we made this work. We don't know why it wasn't working, and we don't know how we made it work.
And we need Skype lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just the thing with Skype is sometimes it works one way and sometimes it works a completely different way just to keep you on your toes.
It's the damn kids. They keep changing things.
But at least they consistently ask you to rate the call after every time.
Oh, yeah.
That hasn't changed.
Wait till we rate this call.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if we can officially begin. If I do... Well, I'm trying to remember how I officially begin. From the bonus room... No, from the studio in the bonus room. I need my wife here to cue me here. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary, this is the Triangle Talk Show. And the audio audience hears the music. The video audience does not. And this is episode 13. It's a bull session. That's what the BS means, not what you're thinking. June 14th, 2018. And I am Gary Pearce, and we are on our way. Gun show, what we're calling this. This is gun show clickbait. Wait a minute, let me get the whole crowd here. There we go. There's everybody. Is gun
guns.
Wait.
Oh, those. All right. I'll put mine away.
Well, I got testosterone. I got a little bit. Jeff, you want to?
I don't know if mine even will show up.
But you got a tattoo across them to show us where they are.
Yeah.
Get big points for that.
All right. So if we can call this officially clickbait, I've got a thing. Now you guys are not going to hear the sound, but you'll see the picture. Wait a minute, I have to put the title back up to make sense. And there we go.
Oh, that's cute.
And what the people out there in the world heard as that was going by was klaxons.
Oh,
nice.
Imagine that. Clickbait.
Well, it was cute.
Yeah. Well, this is as close to a clickbait title as I've come up with. And I like using the little clickbait thing.
You know what the great thing about clickbait is? It works.
It does.
So works.
Yeah.
Even when you know not to do it. And you tell yourself, don't do it. This is clickbait. You still click it.
How many people out there have watched that raccoon climbing the tower in the office building in Minneapolis?
I did, but somebody had to show it to me.
Yeah. It's actually in
I've been
St. Paul.
watching Mama June get bigger and smaller every few months.
I'm so embarrassed to admit I've clicked on those. I'm just going to hide behind my microphone for a moment.
I have no idea what that's all about. Well, so gun show.
It's a Honey Boo Boo reference.
Oh, yeah. I barely know what a Honey Boo Boo is.
You need to come over more.
I guess.
Yeah. Come on, Gary.
I guess.
The kind of TV we watch in our house is vastly different than what you watch at your house.
Yes, I can believe that. So gun show, before we talk about what gun show is, let me introduce the panel here. In the lower left-hand corner is Julia McClung. We've had so much difficulty, I haven't taken the time to ask you what you would like your lower third title to say beside your name. Have I even got that spelled right?
It is spelled right.
Okay.
Make that the title. It's spelled right.
Okay. So you'll see what I mean by having the title right in a minute.
Okay.
And here in the studio with me is here's the dramatic shot. Jeff sitting right here. I can actually touch him almost. There we go. Is Jeff Wittich. Jeff is a friend of mine, and he is a official concealed carry instructor. You teach people how to hide their guns.
Yeah.
See, I can't hide mine. It's just too. Never mind. And then in the kind of in the center square is Lucas Apps, a podcaster. The Triangle Tactical Podcast.
Yes, sir.
Did we get your whole audience? Did you tell everybody?
I didn't, because I'm on hiatus, so I'm not supposed to be doing podcasts right now.
Well, you're not doing your show.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like they'd think that I was like cheating on them if I came on here.
Well, I was counting on you telling your audience that you were here, so we would get all of them watching this show.
I see. And that's why you had me on here, to take my audience.
That's why I have any of the other podcasters on, because I want to scarf up their audiences.
For months, Gary has been telling me, "Oh, we can't wait to get you on the show."
That's right.
Can't wait to have you on the show. It's for my audience.
That's all it's for.
Let's see how it is.
Yeah. And so, Julia, you are also a podcaster, and someone I've been.
I am.
You and I have been trying to gin up a podcast for 2 years?
Yep, about that.
And I had to get rid of that ham radio thing.
You did?
Yeah, I finally gotten rid of it and got this thing started. We're at episode 13. So I've been doing this a while now without you. But
they grew up so fast.
but it's time to bring you in as regularly as you want to be here.
Okay. I thought of my subtitle or third title. What's it called?
Lower third.
Well, my lower third.
Yeah.
Can be tree hugging gun advocate.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because that's, you know what that is?
Talk about clickbait.
That's clickbait.
I feel like she needs a logo of just bare arms. Not actually the words right to bear arms, just bare arms.
Bare arms.
Yeah. Or the right to arm bears. I'm not sure. Okay, so Lucas does the Triangle Tactical, which we haven't explained to our audience what that is. So explain away.
So I host the Triangle Tactical Podcast. I've been doing it for, 6 years now, I think? A little over 6 years. And I am a competitive shooter. So I'm not really a super political person. I try not to get super caught up in politics and things like that. I like to shoot things very fast. And so that's kind of my expertise is competitive shooting and that sort of thing. So just a little bit about me. I am what we call an A-class shooter. So I'm kind of slightly above the middle of the pack. So we have D, C, B, A, and then Master, Grandmaster. I'm almost a master class shooter, but not quite there yet. On top of that, I hold a few certifications. I was an NRA range officer, but I've let that certification drop. And I'm currently a National Range Officer Institute Chief Range Officer. I hold that certification now. So that's me. I also have been a concealed carrier for almost 10 years in North Carolina. And I think I've got a couple of permits that have expired from some other states as well. So that's kind of me, but I've been shooting kind of my whole life, and got into competition, and that's my place.
All right, and Jeff, we have established that you are a concealed carry instructor.
Yeah.
Do you do any competition?
Well, I did an IDPA like thing at the county range. It's a competition, but it's a very informal competition, so we're not classed. It's just to show up when you want, and then a lot of the rules that Lucas is used to, we don't have. The gun don't have to fit in the box. We don't have to make major power and all that stuff.
Okay. And Julia, what kind of a gun person are you, besides tree hugging type?
Fairly new, honestly. I started shooting a few years ago, very recreationally. I'm a convert because I was definitely a no guns in the house, no seriously, John, I mean it, no guns in the house. There was a gun in the house. I'm like, man, I am really mad at you. And then we started going to the shooting range, and then I got my first 22, and then I got my 1911, and then I got my shotgun and started shooting skeet, and I got my concealed carry. And I am fairly political, though in order to keep my sanity, I try not to think about it or talk about it too much. But I am a new shooter. I shoot skeet primarily. I'm not good at it. If class D is the lowest, then I'm an F. I'm much better with handgun than I am with shotgun, but I enjoy both very much. And I do love my Springfield Armory 1911. It's beautiful.
Do you have concealed carry permit?
I do have my concealed carry. Mm-hmm.
I was going to try to get you some business, Jeff.
It's okay.
So 3 concealed carries, and me, I had a BB gun when I was like preteen. The Christmas Story.
I was going to say, you never shut your eye out.
That was Ralphie. Yeah. I didn't shoot my eye out or anyone else's. What I did shoot was a bird sitting on a telephone wire in the backyard. The bird plopped to the ground and then flopped its way into the bushes. And I felt terrible, and to this day feel terrible. Jeff, however, took me shooting the one time I've shot real guns. And I did okay, I guess.
Yeah, you did fine. We went to an indoor range in Raleigh. You made the only comment that anybody at the range has ever made that sent chills up my spine.
Ooh, what did I say?
You said, as we were packing up, that, when you're just here having fun like this, it's easy to forget how lethal these things can be. It's a comment I'll never forget.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up myself at this point, because that was maybe not my predominant impression, but it was a real strong one, that this thing I'm holding in my hand, that is so easy to hold, so easy to point, so easy to pull the trigger on, can do damage that you don't think about when you're watching the cop shows on TV or Dirty Harry in the movies. It's way louder. It can mess somebody up for life, or obviously kill them,
or take it.
Yeah, but short of killing them, it can change their life in not a good way forever, and that's one of the strong impressions I got. Have you guys ever? Has that crossed your mind as you're playing with these things? Is it always on your mind?
Safety is always on my mind. That's like a huge thing. I mean, I play a sport with guns where I'm literally running around obstacles with a loaded gun shooting things, and the only way that can be safe is if everybody has safety on the mind all the time, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to start out getting these range officer certifications, was so that I could better keep the game safe.
And you've also done an exercise where you're running around like a James Bond.
Like Lucas, I'm a range safety officer too, and certified in numerous courses and all. Yeah. And all competition, almost all competition, involves moving and manipulating the gun while you're moving.
Yeah, and that can easily go wrong. What could possibly go wrong? Well,
I'm interested to hear what Lucas says about this, but the biggest offense I see with new shooters is when they're moving from place to place or reloading the gun, they've got their finger on the trigger. That seems to be a hard habit to break. The most important rule is probably the 180 rule, where the gun is allowed to be pointed at all times, but you rarely see violations of that. That's a very serious violation, but let's see what Lucas says. He's more in tune to that.
Yeah, you did a show where you talked about that recently, and something that surprised me. You're talking as a range officer of disqualifying people, and all they did was.
Yep, that's a very common one. So one of the biggest issues I see in guns and in gun manufacturers is they sell a lot of guns that come with a holster that is totally awful trash garbage, and what happens is the holsters that if you buy a gun and it comes with a holster, Julia, your Springfield probably came with one.
And I don't use it.
Good. What happens is that's the brand of guns that I see it happen the most, is somebody will go to draw their gun out of their holster, and the holster's too tight. And so rather than give themselves a wedgie, they reach across their body, they grab the holster with this hand, and they pull the gun out. Well, and when they did that, they just swept their fingers with a loaded gun, and that's a disqualification. You're done shooting for the day.
And that's the word I was trying to remember. It's called swept.
Yes,
where
sweeping.
Where the barrel of the gun points at anything besides downrange at a target.
Correct.
Yeah, and I realized I was showing the camera what I'm talking about. This is an audio show. You guys, we got pictures of everybody. We're on YouTube Live. This is an audio show. So if we describe something for the audience, it's got to be verbal. Yeah.
So Jeff mentioned the 180 rule, and that's a big thing in competition too. So if you think of the competition range as just a square box, there is an imaginary plane that follows you forward, backward, side to side. They go straight up, straight down. And at your gun, always the muzzle of your gun has to always be in front of that plane. And so if I break that 180 degrees either way, even if it's 180.1, I'm done shooting for the day. That's it. And so that's a really strict thing that we have in most competitions, is that 180 rule, to just always keep the muzzle pointed away from everybody else. And, sometimes there are competitions where people will set up a target where it's really close to that line, and you have to be able to manage that as a shooter. And if you can't, you're going to end up going home.
But it's not just crossing the 180 though. It's just, I mean, if you pass it in front of your hand, one finger.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You're done.
Yeah. Yep. You were telling me about go ahead, Julia.
Gary, you were talking about how much fun it is and how that's sort of what scared you. And honestly, that's one of the things with me too. And I realized that what I desperately wanted was the education. And so I think I didn't get the concealed carry to be a badass. I was already a badass. I got the concealed carry because it was the only way I was going to be comfortable shooting in a range or anywhere else. And I'm still not to the level of comfort. I will sometimes walk around concealed, unloaded, just to get myself used to it. But before I got my concealed carry, I have a short temper sometimes, and I can get frustrated. And I thought, gosh, this just seems like a really bad idea for me to have a gun. And everyone I knew who had concealed carry said, it's exactly the opposite. Concealed carry will teach you how serious it actually is to have it, more than open carry. And that's my big issue is our open carry, non-existent open carry laws. But getting the concealed carry really drove home that it's not just fun. It is loud. It's extremely dangerous. I need to be aware of the law. I've got to think about it all the time. Don't sweep. Don't have a holster that's too tight. That's exactly what I did when I got the 1911. I was like, can't get this out of here without using both hands. That went away. But so the concealed carry, it gave me a level of comfort with the gun that I never would have gotten without taking that class. And obviously it varies, the type of class and who's teaching it makes all the difference in the world, because I've heard some concealed carry horror stories. But yeah.
Jeff is nodding. Lucas is nodding. I may have to come take your class. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
So I want to add an element to the discussion here. A couple of months ago, back in April, there was a story on all the news. I first saw it in the News and Observer. I think it hit just about every place. There was a woman in downtown Raleigh, 23-year-old woman, who shot an assailant in broad daylight, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Blunt Street near downtown. She shot a guy who was assaulting her, didn't kill him, just injured him. And the rest of the details are kind of irrelevant, but she had only been, she had a concealed carry permit. It was, I think she'd had it for about a year, but she'd only got the gun a week or so before. Don't know how much training she had. She was a wreck after she shot the guy. Dropped the gun on the street. Somebody else picked it up. They, comforted her, took her into a bar, called the ambulance for the guy she shot. And a few weeks later, the news came out that she was not charged with that with that shooting. That's something that you and I have talked about a lot, Jeff. And I don't know if Julia and Lucas, if you guys have encountered this concept or not. So I'll go to Jeff first on the idea of using a handgun or any kind of gun for self-defense and what you really need to think about when you're doing it, and then see if you guys agree or have different experiences.
Well, you have to do it within the law. You're allowed to defend yourself with lethal force if certain conditions are met, but it's monumentally important that those conditions are met. Now, this case that you're citing, that article didn't have anywhere, it didn't even begin to get into the circumstances of how it happened. It mentioned that there was an assault and a robbery, but it didn't say whether the robbery was an opportunistic thing where the girl dropped the phone and he picked it up and took it, I guess, after he was shot. Well, handguns are not effective. They're killers, but they're not effective killers generally. It takes a long time. People can do a lot of damage after they've been shot. But to get to your question,
a lot of damage to you, the victim.
Yeah, lots of people get shot, kill the person that shot them, and then sit down on a curb somewhere and die themselves. Or not. John Lennon was shot 6 times at point blank range and ran up the steps to his apartment. So they're not instantaneous incapacitators.
I think I read somewhere that something like 80% of handgun wounds that come into emergency rooms are non-fatal. I want to say I've heard that. So
yeah,
I
would
totally
expect it to be higher than that. But that could be about right. But in this case, there are conditions that have to be met, for lethal force to be defendable at all. And some of those things are the shooter has to honestly believe that there is an imminent threat on their life or of serious bodily harm.
We have a cat in the background that I think is believing that right now.
Yeah. But a person of ordinary firmness, and that's what the law says, ordinary firmness would have to agree that under those circumstances, the person was in imminent danger of serious bodily harm or losing their life. So that's the first condition that has to be met. There's a lot of other ones, like the person doing the defending, the shooter, cannot have started the altercation or escalated it. And that's a big one, too. You can't pick a fight with somebody and then when they pull out a gun, shoot them. Under certain circumstances, you can regain the right to use lethal force. If you were the instigator or escalator and you clearly communicate, and this is the honest-to-God truth, you clearly communicate to your adversary that you are discontinuing aggressions and wish to leave the confrontation, and then he continues or escalates the assault, you may regain the right. Now, the reason I say you may regain the right is a lot of these laws are common law and not statutory law. Common law means case law. Most of the laws concerning lethal force and self-defense are common law and not statutory law. Statutory law leaves less room for interpretation than common law. And for that reason, things can be interpreted depending on circumstances that don't enter into the law at all. But some of the other things that do affect common law are disparity of force. If a person doesn't have a weapon, you may still have a right to lethal force if the person is much larger. Now, in this case, we never saw a picture of the girl. Don't know if she's a 98-pound woman with some sort of handicap or limitations. But the picture of the guy looked like he was perfectly healthy, 28-year-old, and really quite strapping. So that would give particularly a woman, but also a small person or an elderly person, a sooner right to lethal force than somebody, that's of equal stature and age. So that becomes a consideration.
All right. We should add, none of us are lawyers.
Yeah.
We are not offering legal advice.
Right.
We're offering the kind of exactly advice that you give when you teach your class.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, what would that category be?
Well, you can tell what has happened. You can,
okay.
You know, we cite cases.
Yeah.
I should mention that the class requires 8 hours of classroom training plus range qualification that can't come out of the 8 hours or more. And 2 of those 8 hours have to be covering laws concerning use of lethal force and self-defense. The other 6 hours is not specified.
When you do your class, do you do it all in one day?
Well, yeah, I do it all in one day.
Okay. Does this sound familiar to you guys?
Yes.
How are your concealed carry classes compared to what Jeff might be doing here?
I vaguely remember my concealed carry class. It was almost 10 years ago. But what Jeff is talking about is very similar to what is in my friend's book here. It's called The Law of Self-Defense, The Indispensable Guide for the Armed Citizen. My friend Andrew Bronca wrote it. And basically his thing is there's 5 steps.
It's a fairly thick book and large.
It is, and there's a lot of case law, but he goes into everything from like jury instructions and the different states and things and all sorts of stuff. So I would say anybody out there who's listening to this, if you're interested in the laws concerning self-defense, whether it be you have a gun or maybe you don't want anything to do with guns, I would very much encourage you to read this book because it'll really set straight a lot of the things that you may have heard about, you know, things like stand your ground and whatnot, which have been really misconstrued by a lot of people. But what Andrew talks about in his book is basically what Jeff was saying, that you have to be the innocent party. It has to be in imminent threat. In a lot of states, you have to do the best you can to avoid it. Your use of force has to be proportional. So obviously, if someone is confronting you with non-lethal force, you probably aren't going to do well if you shoot them. And then it has to basically pass the reasonable man standard. So if a reasonable man would do it, then great. If a reasonable man wouldn't, then probably not going to work out so well for you.
I'm very proud of Lucas.
What I'm imagining right now is you're being threatened and you say, hold on just a minute, and you pull out this book and you start referencing chapters and saying, yeah, okay, now stand back.
If you still have to reference that book, you should not be carrying in public. One of the things that about the concealed carry course, and it was a terrific class that I took. They took it very seriously. And one of them, just rules of thumb, don't carry this unless you're willing to shoot it. Don't shoot it unless you're willing to potentially kill someone, and understand what that's doing to them and yourself. That the goal of carrying a gun is to never have to use it. You never want to shoot anyone under any circumstances. That's not your go-to. That's your worst case scenario. And in the story, in this case, I don't know. I mean, and dropping the gun, again, if you can't, I get that the first time that you shoot someone, it's going to be a shock. Yes, obviously it's going to be shocking, and nobody knows how they're going to react when they do that. But until you have the self-control to not drop a gun in a public street in the middle of the day, you're probably not ready to take care of. She was subjecting other people to unsafe situations through her perceived, I don't know. Like Jeff said, there aren't enough details there to really understand whether it was justified or not. But on the face of that article, it seems awfully extreme for what was described.
Yeah. Are you at all surprised that she wasn't at least charged and, we'll discuss this in court?
I am surprised that she wasn't. I mean, leaving the scene, leaving a gun, walking away, all of those things are, if I went and took a gun and set it down on a street, even if I was upset when I did it, I would be in trouble just for that. I don't even have to shoot anyone. I can't walk away from a loaded gun in a public place.
Well, there's a little more to it than that. In the case of lethal force, everything changes. Your physiology completely changes. people ask me in classes, do you shoot for the legs or what? But you don't, no, you point the gun at center of mass and fire. When your stress escalates that quickly, that fire, your fine motor skills go in the toilet. There are some people that can never get the gun in operation because of that. And if you can get it out, point it, and shoot it, you're doing pretty good. People report developing tunnel vision, auditory exclusion. Most people never hear the gun go off when they fire it in that situation. They report never hearing the gun go off. So dropping the gun and being completely stunned is really not as strange as it sounds. That's pretty normal.
Have you guys ever been in that situation?
I've been to a school in Ohio where they can simulate stress, not quite to that level, but they can simulate stress, and it's amazing what happens to your skills.
It's one of those things where they pop up the targets.
It's a house clearing exercise, something you should never do yourself unless you have small children in the house and there's an assailant hiding in it. That's the only time that that makes any sense to do at all. And that's a case where you do call law enforcement and let them handle it. But that exercise, you actually quit breathing. You have to be reminded, breathe.
You're moving from one room to another.
Yeah.
And then what appears as an assailant?
Posters.
Okay. But they're not just sitting there. They pop up.
No, they're just sitting there, but you don't know where, and so
So you get into that room, and then they're there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not quite like
not all of them are dangerous.
It's not like the TV shows and movies that we've seen where the things will pop up, and then the cop.
Oh, like in Men in Black.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking of. That they have to decide. Do you shoot the little girl with the books because? Why is a 5-year-old carrying a chemistry book?
Yeah, made a good movie, but
it's not like
no. And the one I was in, there was a guy getting a beer out of the fridge. Not dangerous at all.
Nowadays I'm sorry. Nowadays there's places you can go that are even more realistic, where they use what they call simunition rounds, and you actually have a real person attacking you, and you have a gun that fires simunition rounds, and they hurt like crazy. And I mean, they call it force on force training, and that's what a lot of the police departments and stuff use. And there's a lot of places that are opening that thing up now for open enrollment classes as well.
So have you tried one of those?
I have not. I'm not really into the whole tactical training thing, so I just want to shoot competition.
The school I was mentioning does that. They have a house with movable walls that they do their force on force training. So every time you're in it, the layout's different.
So you were telling us that this exists.
Yeah.
But what was your physiological reaction as you were going through this?
Oh, well, I had to be reminded to breathe. As far as handling the gun, I didn't have any trouble with that. But the tunnel vision occurred. Auditory exclusion didn't. I heard the gun go off. I was able to count the rounds and reload between rooms and so forth. But it shows you that even in a simulation, when that happens, that when the real thing happens, which is going to happen a lot faster, that things are really going to be tough. And
a simulation, it's not being surprised on a street. It's you're there in order to have this. So it would be even worse. But I wonder what the incidence of police officers, people who are in the situation, what happens the first time they do this? What is their reaction? How do they?
There's very few accounts that you can find on the internet where people have really written their experience of it. I'm guessing that something just changes where they just want to block it out for the rest of their life. It is, suffice to say, it is a life-changing event, even if you're not charged.
My absolutely only experience with any of that is watching TV, and TV is all wrong about it. I mean, I shot the bird, and none of you guys have been in a confrontational situation where it got to that point. No. You were in a confrontational situation at one point that didn't get to that point, but you thought about it.
Yeah.
How much of that story can you tell?
You're talking about my sister-in-law?
I'm talking about running into a guy at a restaurant who parked bad.
Yeah, I don't want to say a lot about it, but what I'll tell you is this: there was a golf tournament going on. We were at the Jersey Mike's at Preston. Parking was at a premium. Some guy parked in a handicap zone, and at the time, Eric had a broken leg, and we
Eric's your son.
my son, who was 14 at the time. We had not got the placard to be able to use those, so he's hobbling on crutches long ways because I would not park in the handicap zone without the placard. And this guy did, so I called the police and told them. And when I got back in, I sat down to eat lunch. It was 4 of us there eating lunch, and he just got right up in my face. Did you call somebody? I said, yeah, I called the police. You parked in a handicapped spot. And he wanted to go outside and fight, and I wouldn't, but it eventually calmed down. I don't know if it was, and he was there with presumably his wife and a couple of children that appeared to be teens, mid-teens. And so, it all calmed down, and when the police got there, he was leaving, and I beelined for the parking lot and pointed him out. But we have a law. We have to inform the law enforcement officer if we're armed. So I did. And while we talked, he took my gun, unloaded it, put it in his car, which is fine. And when we got done talking, he gave it back and said, don't load it till we're gone.
Okay.
So I didn't. But that's what happened. Everything happened right. I mean, the guy was not out of control, but he had a temper. His temper flared, and mine didn't, so I fared real well talking to the officers.
So I've got on my list of things to talk about. It's down the list a little bit, but we're kind of there at this point, so we'll talk about it. What do you guys think about angry and or drunk or both people carrying concealed or carrying open, carrying any kind of gun?
I think if you're intoxicated, whether it's drunk or high or whatever, your gun should be at home. I'm not a fan of drinking and carrying guns in any fashion.
I think we're all going to agree with that, right, Julia?
Yeah. I've seen at bars, I used to do comedy, and I've seen several times at bars where guys think they're being cool and they get in an altercation in the bar and they pull up their shirt to show that, that they're carrying because they think it's going to, I don't know what they think. I don't know what they think, but it's not okay. And things can get out of control really fast in a situation where people are drunk and emotions are flared.
Yeah, that's 2 misdemeanors right there, by the way.
Yep. Yep. And in a place that has prominent, bar, restaurant, posted everywhere. It was
about 3 if it was posted.
Yep.
So also down my list someplace is a question about what kind of regulation you guys think is reasonable. And I don't want to get into that topic right now, and I'm not sure we will in the time we're going to take, but we might. But what should we do with a person who does something like that? I mean, you guys all say leave it at home. We know there are people that don't. What do we do about them? Because to some extent, they're your constituency and fellow gun enthusiasts, he said, trying very hard not to say gun nuts.
So is the guy who's in the bar flashing his waistband that he's got a gun? I mean, is that the guy that has a legit concealed carry permit, or is he just some guy that's just carrying a gun because he's got a gun?
You don't have to have it tattooed on your forehead, so how do you know?
We're up to 4 misdemeanors if he doesn't have a permit.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So my thought with that, though, is I guess I don't know where I was going with that. I'm sorry.
Well,
just lost it.
What would you want to do with someone that is angry, drunk, high, and's got a gun?
Take them to jail.
Yeah, get them arrested immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
As quick as you can.
Okay. So,
yeah, I don't think anybody on the pro-gun side of things has any issue ever with someone being drunk, belligerent in a bar, flashing a gun. Take them to jail.
Yeah, it's not a take him off to the side and say, hey, you got to cool it, No. There's much more gravity than that.
No rational person would say that. I'm sure there are people who would would advocate for their right to do that under any circumstances. But I doubt any of us associate with the folks who do. Oh, I have a WebEx update. Should I do that now?
You got a business call to go to? So the tree hugger side of Julia and the just, general worldview for me is that, 98% of the people that are gun nuts are that angry guy. I'll admit that my view is distorted, but from just shouting from that side of the exchange, you're going to hear a lot of that. That's what gun lovers are. They're the angry guy that's going to pull it out and try to intimidate people.
That's what I thought too. That's exactly what I thought too. Until just like everything in life that we're afraid of, that we don't know enough about. That's exactly what my position was. Is that if they carry a gun, they're a born again, Trump voting, all these things go hand in hand, and this is just the reality that I know, and it's not. I'm a dyed in the wool, tree hugging gun owner, and I've got a lot of them. What should happen to someone? I don't know. I mean, what can you do? You can't. The problem comes with, so I think concealed carry is great. I think everybody should take concealed carry, whether you ever want to or not, ever carry a gun. I think in the U.S. today, we talk about arming teachers. We should be teaching gun safety in schools as a real course.
We used to.
Did we?
Not in my school.
We did at mine in sixth grade.
You weren't in North Carolina. You were in Maryland.
Maryland, which is much less gun friendly than North Carolina. But yeah, I don't want to interrupt Julia, but I can tell about that.
I think if you have sex education, if we have drug education, I don't even know do we have. It's been so long since I've been in school. I think they were trying to get rid of that too, but that should be there just like anything else that you're preparing a child to exist in the world. They need to know, and you don't rely on the parents to teach them math or history. Why would you rely on them to teach them something as important as this? And we know that education programs like that work when you bring in, I'm a big animal advocate, as Gary knows. Those kinds of programs work, even if a family, even if the parents don't have the perspective that taking care of animals is the right thing. If you teach children, they go home and they become advocates for their parents.
Yeah, certainly wasn't any of that when I went to high school back in the 60s in the Chicago suburbs. I never heard about it. You thought you were old, yeah.
My dad grew up in rural northern Michigan, and he talks about how during deer season when he was in high school, that his school bus was armed higher than any military convoy because they all were going to school with their deer rifles. They just lined them up next to the door during school, and then when they left school, they all deer hunted on the way home. And just it's hilarious to see how much things have changed since then. And that would have been in the 60s. Yeah.
That's one end of gun ownership we haven't talked about. None of you guys are hunters, right?
No.
I grew up a hunter. I haven't hunted since moving down south because the deer are too little down here.
And I shot a bird.
I've never shot anything except a target and a can and some mistletoe with a double-barrel shotgun. That's not a good way to get mistletoe out of a tree.
All right. So the next thing to bring up is this guy. Have you all seen this?
Oh, jeez.
No, I haven't.
Now keep an eye on it. It'll run 3 times and then go to slow motion.
Oh my God.
Okay, so what the audio audience is missing is this is that FBI agent. He is an FBI agent. He's off duty. He's based out of Washington, but he's in a Denver, I was going to say nightclub, but hard to tell. And he did a backflip. Gun slipped out of the back of his pants. He reached down to pick it up. You can see the muzzle flash. It goes off. And what you can't see is that it hit someone. Not lethally, but it hit someone. and he just, he waves his hands and walks away. Discuss.
Yep.
It's horrible and irresponsible and just ridiculous. It should not happen. And he's an FBI agent too, right? He wasn't just like a regular beat cop somewhere. He's an FBI agent.
But FBI agents, unless they're gun enthusiasts, they are not. No law enforcement officer, unless he's a gun enthusiast, is effective with them, understand the laws pertaining to them, or anything else. They're just like anybody else when it comes to their gun. Most of them don't even like having to go qualify once a year or twice a year if their agency requires it. The gun is a thorn in the side.
I have a couple of listeners to my podcast that are FBI agents, and I won't name them, but I feel like they shoot a lot more than just as far as their job than what I hear from a lot of the beat cops in my audience as well. So I think there's a slightly higher level of competence there among, some of the federal agencies and stuff. But even still, like, this is just, first off, like, you should be carrying in a holster that's not going to let your gun fly out like that. I mean,
a retention holster of some sort, and not in the 6 o'clock position.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. But if these FBI agents are fans of your show, then they're probably gun enthusiasts, so they have a lot more knowledge and skill with them than.
Sure, but even when I just talk to them about what they have to do for their job, I feel like they get more shooting in than a lot of the local beat cops and stuff that I talk to who some of them do only have to go classify once a year.
Have you ever asked them how many of them have used their weapon in the line of duty? Either the FBI guys or the cops? Because as I understand it, you can go a whole career and never draw, much less fire the weapon.
I feel like it's a cliche question to somebody be like, "Oh, I'm a police officer," and be like, "Oh, man, you ever shot anybody?" So I try not to like dive into that too much. But I do know, I know someone fairly local here who has, actually I know two people fairly local here who have shot and killed somebody, in the line of duty. And, both of them have said that it's stuck with them for, many, many years since.
Anybody else? Panel?
I don't have words for, that's just the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. I mean, that's.
I hope to go my whole life without ever needing it. Yeah.
For the FBI guy on the video, most people laugh. Well, they think it's funny.
See, and that's.
They'll run it on the Daily Show, and the audience will. They'll.
To me, that says something about that audience.
Right. I don't think that anyone, and Jeff, you were distinguishing between gun enthusiasts and just people who have to carry guns as part of their job. And I'm clearly, I work in an IT company. I don't have to carry one. Better not carry one as part of my job. I'm an enthusiast, but I'm nowhere on the level of you guys. But I think that is, no one who is a gun enthusiast and understands what guns really do would find that funny. It's just too frightening. I mean, I've seen videos of concealed carry classes where they're like, Lucas, you've got the gun there, where they're aiming the plastic gun at the people in the class and having them. I mean, you don't even do that with a plastic gun. You don't ever aim anything that is a gun or looks like a gun at another person once you realize how dangerous it is.
So I've done a little bit of public speaking about guns, about competition, and so one of the things I do is I take my plastic gun in the whole class, and I can we all agree that this is a chunk of plastic, and when everyone agrees, then it is treated as a chunk of plastic. But in any other situation, it's treated like a gun, and it feels weird to if I'm demonstrating sweeping your hand or something, it feels weird to do this, even though I know it's a chunk of plastic. It feels very strange, and so it's one of those things that. You can tell somebody who's a actual person who shoots a lot from someone who isn't by just the way that they move with a gun and handle a gun and shoot the gun and stuff. So it's
the instructor was saying, he's like, you're going to see me do this in order to demonstrate that. But everyone, I mean, we were all holding plastic guns. He's like, I don't want to see, as far as you are concerned in this class, I don't want to see, because I'm trying to teach you habits that you're going to take for when you are holding a plastic gun, and not until you're me should you need to be in the habit of finger off the trigger and never point it at anyone.
How do you demonstrate those things when you're in a class?
Well, just like Lucas said, his experience in the class is pretty typical, but here's something that you'll think is funny. Lucas, when you carry your electric drill, use that gun and show me how you carry it. See, I do too. Wait, Julia probably does too.
I do too.
Okay,
I have an impact driver hanging off my belt almost all day at work, almost every day.
For the audio audience, we need to describe what you did.
Finger very far off the trigger, obviously off the trigger, and electric drill, impact driver, all that stuff gets treated.
Anything with
just
a
like
pistol grip.
Yeah.
Soldering iron, soldering gun.
If you use that type, yeah.
You never do.
Gary, if you don't want me to I have a question out of curiosity, because I have something in mind for myself. What is the craziest thing you've ever seen someone do with a gun in real life that didn't result in something awful happening? But that could.
I'll start. I shot a bird.
Okay.
Flopped to the ground. Flopped its way into the...
Oh, yes, it's awful. It's awful.
Into the bushes, and I never wanted to shoot a living thing again. Okay,
Me?
The craziest, yeah.
I got swept from about 8 feet away by a youngster with a 9mm. Scared the bejeebers out of me.
And he was acting erratic.
He just didn't have proper training. You want to hear the story? It's a 3-minute story.
Sure.
It happened at the Sir Walter Gun Range, just north of Creedmoor, North Carolina, 25 miles north of here, 30 miles north of here. I was sharing a range with 4 people. There were 2 men and 2 boys. The boys looked to be 12 or 13 years old. Neither one of them had ever fired a gun before, and I think one of the adult men had never fired a gun before. They were all 3 guests of this guy who was another member of the club. So we were on a pistol range, shooting stuff up, and one of the youngsters was it was a semi-automatic 9mm. It looked like a Springfield XD class, a very common 9mm, and the first time he fired it, and with his finger still on the trigger, turned around with the biggest grin you've ever seen. But when he turned around, he turned his whole body, and the gun, too, swept right across me. And the one male didn't freak out. He just corrected him immediately. Because if you freak out, bad things, worse things could happen. But it really scared me. And I was on my face on the ground instantly when I saw him turning. But he got completely turned around before he was corrected. That's the scariest thing, and that's just, improper training. Safety is monumentally important, but it is possible to drill safety to the point that you desensitize people to it. This is not what happened there. This is something where, the 4 cardinal rules of gun handling is what should have been covered when they arrived at the range before they unpacked the guns, and those 4 things weren't covered.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you did that with me. I don't really remember in detail. I didn't come close to screwing up, I don't think, did I?
No, you didn't do anything unsafe that day. We had a wonderful day. It was fun.
It was interesting. Lucas, anything weird happened to you?
So in the competition world, most of us reload our own ammunition for competition. And if you are not very careful when you're reloading ammunition, you can get what's called a squib. And that is where you take a cartridge that either doesn't have any powder in it or very little powder in it, and you wind up with a bullet stuck somewhere in the barrel. And it becomes a very dangerous situation.
Well, first you look down into the barrel to see if it's there.
I've seen that happen. I was the range officer. I stopped a shooter because the squibs have a very specific sound. Sometimes they kind of sound like a noise instead of a bang. And I yelled, "Stop, stop, stop." And I said, "I think you have a squib." "Well, I don't think so." And he locked the slide to the rear, but then sure enough, I mean, it was just, so
Lucas pointed his plastic gun at his face.
Yes. Sorry. I forget that we're audio here.
Yeah.
So what can, like, do you remember the old like Daffy Duck cartoons where Elmer Fudd would be coming after Daffy Duck and he would stick his finger in the end of Elmer Fudd's shotgun and he'd pull the trigger and the barrel would just kind of all peel back?
Yeah,
almost
banana effect.
Like a banana. Well, that can happen if you fire a live round into a squib that's stuck in the barrel. And I have seen that happen where a pistol barrel just peeled right back, just like a banana. After someone had a squib, the range officer yelled stop. The shooter didn't stop in time, fired another round, and it just peeled it right back, right down the rifling, just spiraled back, and it was crazy.
Now that looked funny, probably sounded funny. How dangerous was it?
I mean, it could be quite dangerous. I've probably seen 3 or 4 guns get blown up for different things over the years in competition. I've never seen anyone have any serious injury. A year or 2 ago, a friend of mine had gotten some ammunition online that was kind of dodgy, and I think he had a double charge, which is a cartridge that had twice as much powder in it as it was supposed to. And his Glock 19 blew up in his hand. So basically the side of the gun cracked all over here. The magazine release blew out. The barrel hood up here just blew off the gun. And I think he got really lucky because he's like a contractor and his hands are like boot leather. And so he had a couple little burns and stuff, and he said it stung a little bit, but he was pretty much fine. But I mean, those things can happen. I mean, right? Every time you pull that trigger, an explosion is happening in your hands. And I forget what's 9mm, something like 70,000 PSI inside the cartridge. It's something crazy like that. And you don't even think about that when you're shooting, that there's an explosion happening in your hand every time, and things can go wrong.
Jeff, you reload your own bullets, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever made yourself a squib?
Yeah, it happened on a 357 Magnum, and the only thing I have to add to
the dirty hairy gun, right?
No, smaller. The next one down from that one. I had sweat in it, and I remember I'm going to watch this box because I got it in a box, and sure enough, at the range, it squibbed. I got some really interesting photos. The barrel lodged, the bullet lodged 1/4 inch into the forcing cone, so I could open the cylinder, but it was unburned powder in there. So the primer went off, but none of the powder did. The other thing I noticed besides the sound that Lucas mentioned is the gun doesn't recoil when it squibs.
I have seen semi-automatic pistols actually recoil and load the next round when the squib's far enough down the barrel. So that's how the one time that the guy fired another round into it, it was actually able to load the next round, which was kind of scary.
That is, I haven't seen that.
I think it happens more and more in competition. We're moving away from your traditional like copper-plated bullets and using what we call a coated bullet. Like this one I have here, it's blue and it's just actually coated with paint, like a blue polymer, and they're just a whole lot cheaper for people who shoot a lot for competition. They work fantastic.
Looks like a lipstick cartridge.
Yeah. And there's companies that make them in all sorts of different colors. You can get them in blue and green and purple and black and whatever color you want.
Do you do your own reloads? I know you have an advertiser who does.
Yeah, I reload. So I reload just strictly competition ammo. But I also, I have an advertiser that loads ammo. I have an advertiser that actually makes these blue bullets. And yeah.
All right. Can I move on?
Well, no, because I haven't told my story.
Oh, your story, yes.
So I was shooting skeet, and I was there. I was doing my qualifying round to shoot on my own at Durham County Wildlife, which is a great club. And there was a father with his 2 sons there, and they hunt. And they were there because he wanted to get his sons qualified for skeet. So apparently it's a father and his sons. One was preteen, one was, I don't know, maybe they were 11 and 13, something like that. The 13-year-old one, so rule with skeet is you cannot load your gun until you are on the station where you are going to pull. You have to be in a box. It's very important, and you will be disqualified if you're in a competition for loading outside the box. But it's one of the biggest safety rules is you don't load the gun until you're ready to shoot. And the older boy had already gotten in trouble for loading between, he was just standing and waiting in line to get onto the station. He'd already been caught by the range officer for loading between rounds. So he had loaded his gun and he was just hanging it down by his side. And the father didn't seem to, he's like, yeah, you can't load till you get on the station. A couple of stations later, the kid sits down and he's got his gun on the ground and he's leaning with his chin in his hands. He's using it as a headrest for his head while he rests between rounds. And the range officer whipped around and saw, and the father seemed, so he's like, well, it's not loaded. I'm like, your kid's using his gun barrel for a headrest.
So the barrel was pointed into his chin?
Yeah, he was using it. You can't see, but he had it on the ground, stock on the ground, and had his hands, and it was pointed right up into his chin, just using it as a headrest.
Yeah. And
I knew that everybody would have a scary story, and the interesting thing to me about what I just knew these scary stories was going to be, that these are all really scary things that happened in very controlled situations around people who know guns, use guns. This family goes out on the weekends and he gives his children guns and sends them out into the woods.
In a very uncontrolled situation.
Right. In a very uncontrolled. Think how badly things can go when it's not in a controlled situation. I mean, every one of these situations, these instances happened in a scenario where there was training, it was competition shooters, it was, out at a club and your parents right there, and really bad things. I still have, that just gave me chills. And that the father didn't lose his mind right then and there and say, okay, well, you don't have a gun anymore. Just
there's a mindset among people who I've noticed, it's people who don't shoot often, who tend to say those things like, well, it's not loaded. And that's very bothersome to me. I've had some new shooters come out to matches before, and in the matches that I shoot, you absolutely cannot even touch your gun until I tell you to make ready. And at that point, when I tell you to make ready, I've already checked down range. The range is clear. There's no one down there. I've made sure that everything is ready to go, and then I'll tell you to make ready. And if you touch your gun even a second before I tell you to make ready, I'm disqualifying you and you're done shooting for the day. Not even just on that stage. You're done for the entire day. You're welcome to stick around and help reset targets, but there's no more shooting for the day because we take safety very, very seriously. So in your situation, Julia, I'm a little disappointed in whoever that range officer was that saw the kid load his gun when he wasn't supposed to, and then still allowed him to walk around with a gun for the rest of the day. Because had that been my range, he'd have been sent packing, and I probably would have sent Dad packing too if he got any lip with me. There's no excuse for that.
You get that strict, Jeff?
Well, in a formal competition, what Lucas says is the absolute truth. But normally, I go to what's called the skeet fun shoot, where the average score is 18 as opposed to 25. And if somebody made, you would probably get a warning before you were just sent out. But in sanctioned competition, or even, just not sanctioned competition, but competition, it's pretty common that your first mistake, you're out of there. If it's a more informal thing, it's kind of intended for new people, so you have some expectation that people are going to make mistakes, so you keep an eye on them and correct them. You get better gun advocates if you can afford to have a little patience like that. Now, if something is egregious enough, like a violation of the 180 rule, that shouldn't get a second warning. Finger on the trigger when you're moving for a new shooter is probably worth one warning.
We pretty much consider any sort of safety violation to be you're done for the day. And so most of the places I go to have like a new shooter's brief before the match. And so if it's your first time, come over here and we're going to cover things like do not touch your gun until you are told to touch your gun. And here's the one place where you can touch your gun, but you're not allowed to touch ammunition there. And the only place you can do it is, in this area. And we explain the 180 rule, and we explain all the safe gun handling procedures, like moving with your finger off the trigger and all that sort of stuff. So that way the new shooters don't get hosed on their first time out if we can help it, because it's no fun for me to disqualify somebody who's brand new at their first match. It really, like, it pains me, but it's one of those things too. Like, let's say I let them keep shooting, and then on the next stage they break the 180 and they have an accidental discharge and they shoot somebody. If I get deposed and asked about that situation, what happened, and every lawyer is going to ask me, so wait, so they were unsafe earlier in the day and you allowed them to keep shooting? I don't want to be in that situation as a range officer. So I'd rather hurt a little bit of feelings if I have to than put myself in that sort of situation.
Okay. Now can I move on?
Oh, you can.
Okay. I want to get out of the range and onto the street again, or actually into the classroom. Arming teachers. One side of the gun lobby is very much in the let's arm. Not every teacher. If I were speaking from my liberal agenda, I would exaggerate and say they want to arm all the teachers, which is not what they want to do. They want to train teachers who are willing to do it to be armed. Is that even still a good idea? Even that restricted?
Yeah, you're looking at me. I guess you want to go to me on that.
Anybody.
Okay, well,
jump ball.
First, the idea of just arming teachers arbitrarily is a really bad idea, and I'm sure everybody here agrees with that. But a teacher that needs to be a little more than willing. They need to want to. A school is... In a school, you have one person responsible for about 30, and the 30 they're responsible make it their business to do things that the teacher doesn't know about or find ways to get around rules and everything else. So it's
a fraught situation to begin with.
It really is to begin with. So it's going to have to be somebody that
that's in a nice, pleasant, everybody's behaving themselves type school.
Right. If I were responsible for that situation, I would carefully evaluate that person, and not only would they need to want to, I would have to honestly believe that they were capable of controlling the gun at all times. I'm not going to say no, it shouldn't be done. There are some people that can do it, and in some situations that would be a very valuable asset. But you really have to be careful on who it is. It can't be just somebody that's willing. It has to go much deeper than that, I think.
Before I add any more context to what I'm talking about, you guys want to, Julia, Lucas, want to chime in?
I mean, I think pretty much what Jeff said. I was watching the news one day this week, and there was a school district in Florida that they were interviewing, and they were talking about how they've created a program since the Parkland shooting down there, where they are arming teachers. I forget which school district it was. And they were interviewing the sheriff who was running the program. And one of the things that he explained was that the teachers that made it through this program would have more rounds downrange and be held to a higher standard than his officers would be. And I think that's a decent start. I think if we look at a lot of these mass shootings that we've seen, a lot of the times when these people are confronted with an armed citizen, they tend to run away or they shoot themselves or whatever. There was a mall shooting, I want to say it was in Oregon maybe a year or two ago. Guy came into a mall, started shooting. Somebody engaged him. I forget if it was a police officer or a citizen. And the dude ran into a stairway and offed himself. And I'm good with that. And so I kind of wonder if if we just harden the target by saying, listen, this school district has some armed teachers, and we're not going to tell you who they are, and we're not going to tell you what schools they're in. I just kind of wonder what effect that would have on this sort of thing happening there when you just harden the target that little bit.
I think it's a good deterrent.
So go ahead, Julia.
Go ahead and tell people that and don't do it. I just can't imagine the situation under which a teacher in a public school is going to even have a chance of reacting in in this kind of high stress situation when we know that the experts can't always react reliably. I mean, wasn't it Parkland where the resource officer, I mean, they say he froze. I don't know. Did he freeze?
I think he was outside and didn't go back in, I think was the story.
Yeah. Just read an interesting Washington Post article about him and how every day of his life, I mean, at the time he thought he was doing the right thing, but he talked about auditory exclusion and he talked about all these other things that are going on in the situation. And, Gary, I know you know, and I'm not going to talk about it except for just a second. I mean, I watched the Las Vegas shooting out of the window of Mandalay Bay, just a few floors over. And even in that situation, the stress, I couldn't even, I saw what was happening. I couldn't understand what was happening. I mean, I knew what was happening, but I couldn't understand what was happening.
You were in the hotel. The shooter was a few floors up or down from you.
Yeah.
And could you hear it?
Oh, I heard it. I watched the people run and fall and drop. I saw all of it.
Yeah. And the reaction that you had over time was powerful.
Oh, it took me, it's still, there are times, the first time I looked out of a hotel room window from a few floors up, I lost it again. The first time I heard fireworks at the fair, I lost it again. I actually haven't shot since then, but I'm going to Saturday.
Back on that horse.
Yep. But watching it through a hotel room, listening to it, I mean, I heard them blow the door, and I heard him take his own life. That's so stressful and so confusing. I just can't imagine someone who isn't trained day in and day out, no matter how well they're trained. That's not their job. I just can't see it being anything other than terrifying and a potential disaster.
From my, and thank you for sharing that, because I know it's not easy. From my lefty position, I'm not going to say it's that we shouldn't arm teachers. But what I'm thinking of is that if you have an armed teacher, they're going to be an armed teacher 100% of the time. They are going to confront a mass shooting situation 0.00000, add a few more, and eventually we'll put in a 1% of the time. What will be the likelihood that something will go wrong in a non-mass shooting situation because that teacher is armed compared to the chances of a mass shooting? I'm looking at that cost-benefit ratio and saying, well, what do we do? The other thing is, and this goes to all areas of concealed carry, where we're thinking, well, if the bad guy doesn't know who's carrying a gun, what does he do? Does he not do anything because he's worried, or does he proactively start taking people out because he doesn't know who's got the gun? So he's going to. These are parts of speculation that don't exist in my life, and they don't even exist in the movies. They're just things that, well, I'm thinking what might happen. What do you guys think about that? Okay, I'll look at Jeff first.
Okay.
Because he's close enough I can touch him.
Okay, well, a mishap on a normal day when nothing bad is happening would be a terrible thing. So that can't be allowed to happen. And that's why I said before, I would have to have complete confidence that the person carrying the gun is capable of not dropping it in the bathroom stall and blowing up the toilet, or shooting somebody,
doing
or
a backflip,
letting a student get it, or what have you, or letting a student know he has it. That would be bad. So, yeah, I agree with you. These are bad things. So what is the possibility of it happening? It's all in who you get. There will be people that can go their entire career as a school teacher and never let anyone know they're armed. those are the ones you want to arm. Well, they also have to be able to not freeze up when a situation, and like Julia says, when there is an active shooting situation, things are confusing. The amount of input that your brain is getting is oftentimes more than what it can sort out, which is why you don't get involved in somebody else's gunfight. It's a very confusing environment.
I'll cast my gaze over to the monitors in front of me and let you guys.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I'm necessarily the guy that has the answers. But I'm willing to try things, and I'm willing to try, and does it have to be teachers? What if it was a janitor? What if it was the lady that sits at the desk at the front office? I mean, it could be anybody. I'm a big fan of school resource officers for this sort of reason. But I don't know all the answers. And I think if we do arm people, there's absolutely going to be a time where somebody has an accident. It's going to happen. And it doesn't happen a lot. I mean, if we look at the general concealed carry public, we have far less accidents as concealed carriers than police officers do. I don't have the statistic in front of me for that, but I've seen it many, many times. And so, but yeah, I mean, when we license people to drive cars, there's car accidents. And when we license people to drive airplanes still crash. And so to think that we can arm a bunch of people and that nobody will ever have an accident is it's fantasy land. But at least in my mind, I think I'm willing to try something. And if it's arming people who want to be armed, who feel like they, and they can take enough classes and enough proficiency to reach a level that we can agree on, then I'm good with giving that a try.
So out there in media land, Twitter and Facebook, and even on on the talk shows and TV and stuff, we have what I'm calling the divided states of America. The polls. On one side, there will be people saying arming teachers is your solution, and they know it for sure. And the other side is totally horrified about arming teachers, and they know for sure that that's just a disaster waiting to happen. What I'm liking about this discussion is nobody's at those polls. We are. You guys are willing to take a position to say, yeah, it could be it could happen bad, and it will take a really well trained and interested in the right mindset person, and even then it could go bad. And I'm not going to sit here and say it will always go bad. I think
polls, P-O-L-E, by their very definition, are the right and the left bell curve. I think most people are smarter than that, and when given an opportunity, are willing to have a more intelligent discussion about it. As I said, I can't imagine a situation where it would be good, but I would like to see us try other things first, like gun education in schools and, better follow-up. I mean, almost none of these shooters have been unknown to the system or completely unidentified for mental health or behavioral or other issues that they've had in the school. I'd like to see those things happen and give those things a chance to work before. I'd like it to be the last course, not the first course of action. And my concern is that we've got reactionary decision making happening with it, and no matter what your decision is, I mean, picking a paint as a reaction is something you might regret. I say that because I'm painting my house right now. But this is certainly something that shouldn't be done as a reaction to anything. It should be done as after careful consideration and other options are tried and exhausted, or maybe in combination with those. But as the answer, I just can't see it as the answer.
My prediction.
I'd rather prevent it. I'd like to find a way to prevent it versus stopping it while it's happening.
Yeah. And I don't think that we are going to figure out a way to prevent it or a foolproof way of stopping it.
So, Julie, you've mentioned gun education in schools. Like, what does that look like to you? I'm just curious. Like, is it like stay away from guns, or what are you like? No. What are you thinking? Like teaching the 4 rules of gun safety and stuff, or what?
Yeah. So I think that stay away from guns would be as effective as abstinence education is for sex. That's exactly, it would be just as effective. And the states where we have abstinence has replaced sex, or postponing sexual involvement or abstinence education has replaced actual sex education. That's where you see teen pregnancy and all of those things that we're trying to prevent go up.
There's that tree hugger side coming out.
Well, I mean, that's just fact. There's science there. I'm not a tree hugger if I'm talking science. But my guess is that that's the same. It would be as effective as that. Yeah, all the basic rules of gun safety, the parts of a gun. I mean, basic gun education. I think it would be great. Do the concealed carry class. I mean, don't give them a concealed carry permit at the end of it, and don't take them to the range probably. But yeah, do the concealed carry class. Understand the law. Understand, really drive home. I used to, before driver's ed, I had to watch, they were essentially faces of death videos before I could, take my driver's license. Watch those videos. They're scary as hell. We've got plenty of educational material. And I'm actually not an advocate of shock therapy for education, but make it real. Make it real world. Make it practical.
Are you familiar at all with the NRA's Eddie Eagle program?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's a program that the NRA has for really little kids that are 4, 5, 6 maybe, and it's basically a gun abstinence program about, like, if you find a gun, stay away from it, tell an adult, and it's done in a really good, like, cartoony kind of sing-songy way, and I would like to even see that implemented in the younger grades in school. So, if your kid's having a sleepover at somebody's house and they're playing, and all of a sudden, there's a revolver underneath the mattress that somebody pulls out, that, I think it's great to teach kids these things, to see accidental gun deaths go down even more, even though they've fallen like a rock since like the 80s. But I'd be happy to see them go down more.
Agreed. Now, when I was saying that real education, I'm not thinking about toddlers. I think that would be terrific for elementary, and maybe you do at every major, so elementary school, middle school, high school, you do a different level of education and a different level of awareness, because the number of children who are encountering a gun is very different than the number of 17-year-olds today that are encountering guns.
Am I the only one that actually fired a gun in an elementary school?
in one, inside one?
No.
A student in elementary school.
A student in elementary.
Well, I killed a bird.
That
scary.
was a school function.
Oh, wow.
It was fifth grade of school, and in our county there was a camp called Fresh Air Camp, and all fifth graders spend a week at that camp, and for most of us it's our first time away from home, so we get a long list of things to take. And then once at the camp, each day there were 2 activities, an activity before lunch and an activity after lunch, and it would be like field science and art, with stuff you find in the wild and stuff, and one of those was firearms. And NRA representatives were there with 22s. They demonstrated a shotgun. They put a big sheet of paper out, fired at it, brought it in to show you what it does. And then everybody fired the 22. They set up targets. I think we each got 5 rounds, and it was a single-shot bolt action. But the impression it made on everybody is, it's an introduction to guns. You learn you can shoot them and survive it. At the time, it was pretty normal and not out of it was just a cool thing to do. Now, because of the stigma associated with guns, it would be a very different experience for an elementary school student. In fact, I don't think it could be done now. Yeah. But at the time, it happened with all fifth graders and was not a big deal. It wasn't the main activity they talked about for weeks afterwards. A couple of us did, but not for most.
The future gun nuts. Although that really
Right.
that for your school probably would have been more than 50% of the people. So it even didn't even get the future gun nuts.
Well, that was more a sign of the times than the location. It was Aberdeen Proving Grounds, Maryland, though.
Yeah. So now my school experience was pure Christmas Story. You know, Ralphie and his BB gun, and that's all anybody had any connection with. How about you guys?
I mean, I did a lot of shooting with my dad, you know, growing up, hunting and stuff, but in Boy Scout camp and shooting BB guns and Cub Scout camp and that sort of thing. But as far as school related, there was, but I mean, I grew up in the early 90s, so there was none of that.
Yeah, I knew my grandparents lived on a sailboat, and they had guns on the boat because they sailed open water, and pirates are a real thing. So he had a rifle and a revolver, but you know, it was not for Julia. It was a very clear, this is not, of course, the safety was my grandmother sewed a little pouch for them out of some kind of vinyl that she also used to cover the seats on the boat. So it wasn't really locked away, but I knew that I wasn't allowed to touch it, and I never shot anything.
Should there ever be a revolver under the mattress?
Not unless you want an alibi.
I've seen your safe. Jeff's got his locked away tight. I'm not sure how safe you would be in a home invasion because it could take you a while to get to, but there might be something.
Nothing in the big safe, you mean, or the little hotel room safe next to the bed?
The big one.
And nothing in there is loaded.
Yeah.
They're all treated like they are, but nothing should be loaded in there.
Yeah.
I mean, for years I kept a loaded handgun in a holster right next to on my top of my dresser, but I don't have kids. It's only my wife and I. And if anyone was coming into our house, the gun was either in my pants or locked in a safe. And you know, with a child on the way now I have a quick access safe, but there's 2 loaded, ready to go handguns in it right now, and that's the way that they're stored. But they're locked in there. And the safe I have, I think you can put in like 4 wrong combinations, and then it will just lock itself down for a couple hours or something. And if you pick it up and move it, alarms go off and all kinds of cool stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think you can say that there's never an okay time to stick a gun under the mattress or whatever, because, you know, if it's 2 adults living in a house and it's only them, and, you know, I've owned my house for 7 years now, and there's never been a child in my house ever.
There's no laws about this, just consequences.
No, some states there are. I think some states have safe storage laws, but there's not anything. Well, in North Carolina, it's illegal for you to leave a firearm in a place where a minor can access it, but there's not actually laws that define, I think, what that means. Is that kosher to you, Jeff?
There are laws that define what that means, but strangely enough, it pertains to residents of the same house. So if an adult and a child live in the same house, it's illegal for that adult to leave the gun where children. If while it's a very bad idea, there's no law against yourself. If a child visitor comes and a gun is accessible, the law doesn't address that.
Yeah, but there will be consequences if something happens.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
I get around this by spending no time with children ever.
Well, unless you and I are in the same place.
Yeah, Gary's as close as I get to hanging out with children.
Okay, so now I want to tax the kumbaya just a little bit here, maybe a lot. There is a proposal. It's not ever going to go anywhere. It's not going to see the light of day, but it is called the red flag legislation in North Carolina, and that is very as simple as I can describe it. If I think that you are a danger to yourself or others based on your firearm, I can take some actions and go through some procedures which involve a court, and they're not instantaneous, but they're fairly quick. It's days, it's not hours, but it's also not months, and have your guns taken away for a period of time. Now I've drastically simplified it. The language which I looked at earlier today in the statute, which again, it's been sent to a committee where it's going to die. It's never going to see the light of day, but that doesn't mean it's not going to spin a lot of people up.
So this is very similar to involuntary commitment proceedings, which I have had to serve on people. But this is like specific to gun concerns or just in general?
No, it's specifically guns. I'll put the bill up on the video for those that are looking. It's colloquially known as the red flag law. The title of the legislation is Extreme Risk Protection Orders, or ERPO. It's referred to as that quite a bit. An act to authorize the issuance of an extreme risk protection order to restrict temporarily a person's access to firearms if there is evidence that that person poses a danger of physical harm to themselves or to others. And I can go through it pretty quick. A family or household member can request it. A law enforcement officer or agency can request it. To request it, they have to make an allegation that the gun owner poses a danger of physical harm to themselves or to others. They got to identify what guns the gun owner has and where they are. They have to disclose whether there are any existing protection orders already out, like a restraining order of some kind, or any pending lawsuits between the parties. There is some protection against nuisance filings. A person who knowingly makes a false statement when petitioning for the ERPO, or they're guilty of a Class 2 misdemeanor. If you actually succeed in getting one of these served, the summons is served not later than 5 days prior to the date. Let's see. If you convince a court that one of these orders should be out, it isn't automatically granted. There's going to be a hearing, and it's not later than 5 days. You got a summons to the person who is going to have their guns confiscated. They receive a summons not later than 5 days prior to the date set for the whole hearing. And what you can get, if there is one of these things issued, the court would order the respondent to surrender to the sheriff all firearms, ammunition, permits to purchase firearms, permits to conceal carry that person has got. There has to be a hearing within 10 days of the filing. One continuance is permitted for another 10 days. If the court finds that the respondent does pose a danger of causing physical injury to themselves or to others by having a firearm in their custody, they shall immediately surrender to the sheriff all the guns. If they don't do it, the sheriff can issue a warrant to search and seize and then send in the cops. You can get the stuff back if you file a motion with the court when the order expires. You got to do it within 90 days after it expires, and you get the guns back within 30 days. The order can last up to a year, but it can be renewed. If it's renewed, there's another hearing. Can you appeal? Yes, you could submit one motion a year to terminate the order, and you have another hearing between 15 and 30 days after that motion to appeal has been filed. So that's, get the right picture back on here. That's what I learned in digging through a pretty detailed, complex order that has a lot of legal language to it. And I think I understood most of what I was reading. And as you can tell, I already got myself confused in a spot or two. Once again, this is sent to a committee, proposed by a Democrat, sent to a committee to die. Not going to happen. Should something like this happen, whether exactly like this or in some amended form. Once again, on the polls, the far left side says, that should have happened a long time ago, and worse. And we should just take all the guns away anyway. And on the far right, this is confiscation. I've seen that, that is a response on a Reddit forum that was talking about it. This is just pure gun confiscation. Where's the middle?
Well,
too much kumbaya for this group.
I'm never short of an opinion. So what I have to say about it is it's not confiscation. The intent here is to protect people from themselves and to protect the general public from people. But the problem with it is a citizen can deprive another citizen of their constitutional rights without due process, and that
there is a hearing.
It doesn't matter that I guess there is some due process.
Yeah.
And of course the version I read didn't include that because it was, right wing, the right wing proposal of, interpretation of what the proposal is.
Yeah, I'll show you the actual language here, where it's hearing and issuance of the order. And a court shall order a hearing on the petition no later than 10 days from either of the following dates. There's something about an ex parte ERPO, and I don't really know what that is. I'm only concentrating on the ones filed by family. But, there'll be a hearing and there can be an extension. One continuance. The continuance is probably more often going to be requested by the person who owns the guns, and they only allow one, so he doesn't put this off forever.
Well,
but there is a hearing.
I can tell you it doesn't feel right to me.
Sure. But none of us like the government sticking their nose in our business.
Well, what about... we misuse GPS technology when our company's vehicles have it in it. How are we not going to misuse this? The misuse is what I fear.
Yeah. So a nuisance filing has got the penalty of a misdemeanor, but how do you get to that?
Yeah, and
slap on the wrist.
Having dealt with in a past job a lot of misdemeanors going through the courts around here, they are so busy with felonies and more important violent crimes and stuff that I would be very surprised to see someone get actually slapped with this misdemeanor on their first offense for this. And that's that's a big part of this that bothers me, is that so you have someone can, realistically, they're not going to end up getting that misdemeanor the first time around because the DA is probably busy in court that day and they have to spend their time on the bank robbery case that they're working on or the gas station robbery case. And so they're going to plea this one down to, basically next to nothing. So
now, the misdemeanor is not pointed at the person who owns the guns. It's pointed at the person who makes it.
Filing.
Yeah. So my concern is so then you have someone who can nuisance file, but then at the bottom here it says the gun owner can submit one motion per year to terminate this gun violence restraining order, whatever EPR. I forget exactly what the terminology is there.
Extreme risk protection order, EPRO.
Yes. So I can only Gary calls and says Lucas is a nuisance to, or is gonna be violent or something, and I can terminate that once. I can say, hey, no, I'm not, and
you get your first hearing where you can say no, you're not, and if the court decides you are, the guns go away for up to a year. Right,
but my concern is if you're lying. And then I can only submit one motion per year. And let's say the first time the judge says, okay, no problem. But then what about the second time, third time, fourth time? And I can only submit one motion per year to terminate. That seems silly. I don't like.
You can ruin somebody's life for a year with no consequence.
Yeah, like Jeff said,
you disrupt their life for a year.
Bad.
Yeah, probably not ruin, but you can make them unhappy for a year.
Yeah. I don't know. Unhappy. I mean, what effect is that going to have on employment if somebody has this extreme risk protection order against them? I know I've had jobs in the past where if I were to get some sort of restraining order from somebody, bye-bye job.
So there's, the devil lies in the details.
let the bleeding heart
Tree huggers.
answer this. I'm gonna be the most passionate response to this. This is ridiculous. This is utterly ridiculous. We already have laws to protect society when someone is an imminent, extreme risk of danger to themselves or others. It's called involuntary commitment. What we're talking about is seizing property and then giving it back to someone with no provision for getting them help for why it is that they are currently in extreme danger to themselves or others. I'm not going to wait an involuntary commitment, and I will tell you, as someone who has had to file and execute 2 of them, there is nothing easy about this. And if you are, there will be very few nuisance filings of this, because if it is anything like involuntary commitment, it is a huge pain in the ass. I mean, a huge pain in the ass. And they take it very seriously if you serve. I mean, and I worked in a mental health setting. I wasn't just serving involuntary commitment orders on ex-boyfriends. So that has occurred to me. It's a huge pain to do.
Don't tell Cindy anything about that.
There's a lot of hoops you have to go through, but the reality is that, you know, I don't have a problem from a legal perspective. If you get 1 DUI, you probably get to drive a little bit more. You get more, it gets worse, things progress. I think there will be very few nuisance ones, but it is a complete waste of paper because we already have these laws in place. You need, if someone is really going to kill themselves or kill someone else, you need to be able to act quickly, and you need to get them help. You don't need to take away their guns and then potentially give them back to them.
Yeah, so. This doesn't seem like it would be fast enough for a situation that it's designed for.
I've had situations with one of the involuntary commitments that, I mean, there was extreme imminent. I had to remove other people from a house and let this person continue just spiraling out of control while I ran to the courthouse, filled out the paperwork, got the sheriff. I mean, this was an hours-long process while there was someone who was, I mean, there's nothing I could do. This is not, it's not something that someone would do lightly, but it's also totally unnecessary.
So if we knew about somebody that we were speculating might become one of those mass shooters, and we've said, well, there have been clues, you know, some people might have known. So if we have one of those might have known people, you know, I think, you know, Jeff is going off the deep end, and I know he's got a pretty good armory, right? Not arsenal, armory.
Yeah. Arsenal.
Arsenal.
Ammunition is manufactured there.
Oh, okay. So, you know, this is a law crafted to handle that situation. Whether it would do a good job of it or not, I don't know. And I'm not sure what else there is out there. We're not going to commit him. We're going to, you know.
Well, and are you going to take his parents' guns? Are you going to take his grandfather's guns and his uncle's guns and his brother's guns?
Well, and the collectors. What's going to happen to the condition of the collector's pieces?
Yeah. This is, if someone is going to do harm, they don't need to have their weapon taken away. They need help.
They need to be taken away.
They need to be taken away. And it needs to happen right now. Because if I am absolutely intent on doing harm, I will find a weapon to do it with. I need help. I don't need taking my driver's license or taking my car, taking my guns. It doesn't matter. If I am intent to do harm, I will do harm. I need help.
Yeah. Which is why I think I'm saying we are not going to make this go away. Let me ask you guys one last group question, and then we'll wrap up because we're hitting the 2-hour mark in a moment. My left-wing buddies tell me that America has way more guns per capita than any other country on the planet. There may be one little country somewhere that has more. But I mean, we are way more fascinated with this than it seems like anybody else is. What's the deal with that? Why?
Well, our founding fathers 200 years ago gave us that right, because that right is how we got our independence. that question, people ask me that a lot. Why do you? Well, people, not many people know I carry a gun, but those that do ask that question, and it's not for a self-defense reason at all. It's just because I like guns, like being around them. What better way than to carry one with you? But an armed population, I think, is a good thing. The liberal in you is not going to like this, but the ability to repel an out-of-control government is a real thing. Yes, in the case of a local militia going up against the U.S. Army, there can only be one outcome. But that's not the type of a situation that it would become over the course of years. It would be more guerrilla-like tactics.
It would be the Revolutionary War again.
Yeah, and in a society like that, you're going to end up with mass shootings in the schools and things like that, and that's really unfortunate. But liberty is not guaranteed safe.
Anybody else?
Was it Jefferson that said guns are the people's liberty's teeth?
Oh,
I don't know.
It may well have been him. He had quite a lot to say about the right to bear arms.
But yeah, like what Jeff said, I mean, I like shooting. And so I think one of the things that made me become very passionate about keeping my guns is getting into sport shooting, because I think about the amount of investment that I've put into practicing with my guns. And let's face it, the gun that I shoot in competition is illegal in Massachusetts and in California. And maybe, I guess the magazines I use would be illegal in New Jersey and Colorado and in a bunch of these other states now. And so, people, they talk about, well, we don't want to take away all the guns. We just want to get rid of the assault weapons. Well, depending on how you define assault weapon, my competition gun is an assault weapon, depending on your definition. And folks on my side will say, that assault rifles are automatic guns. And I would agree with that definition, but yet it can be defined however they want it to in a piece of legislation. You could define my dog to be an assault weapon in a piece of legislation if you wanted to, because it's how you write it into the law. And so, when I think about the amount of time and effort I've put into becoming a proficient shooter and a safe shooter, and I hear people want to change that or take that away, and quite frankly, it pisses me off. And so that's why I've become such an ardent supporter.
So I missed a lot of what was said because my network dropped. As someone who has 2 dogs that are illegal in many areas of our country now, but I heard, Lucas, what you said, and Jeff, I heard the very end of yours that, liberty isn't always safe. And I tend to, even as a hippie, I tend to, wherever possible, it's a really slippery slope. And so I always lean toward education, help for people who need help, and taking care of each other, creating a society where we're taking care of each other and we're using guns because we enjoy them. I don't carry for protection. I shoot because I think it's fun, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And whatever it is I choose to shoot, however you define whatever weapon, I've shot flamethrowers. They're pretty damn fun. And I think there do need to be reasonable laws. I don't think anybody should carry around a flamethrower if they can't say it. But yeah, I tend to err on the side of liberty. God, am I a Republican? No.
I was getting this close to pulling your liberal card.
No.
Your tree hugger, granola eating.
Classical
card.
Liberal.
Yeah.
Classical liberal.
Yeah. So I'll confuse everyone when I say that I didn't think that our government was particularly prone to need overthrowing, or as a great line from, I think the show is Newsroom. The that one of the people was saying it was an election day. We just overthrew the government, and not a shot was fired. I didn't until recently think that we would have a government that would need to be overthrown until Trump was elected. And I'm not saying that Trump is a government that we need to overthrow, but it is a government where a demagogue fooled enough people that it scares me to the point of thinking that it could happen worse than that, because people can be fooled into it. And if you don't agree with my take on that, then go back 8 years and think of what happened when Obama was elected. And that we heard the same thing from the other side. So now I am a little bit concerned that maybe we need protection from overthrowing, from being able to stage another revolution and protect ourselves from the government. I don't think that it would work.
Not with
no matter how many folks we have hiding up in the Smokies with rifles. But
it worked pretty well in Afghanistan. They pushed the Russians out. They've done a pretty good job, holding their own against our military. I mean, the guerrilla warfare and stuff that they've been able to do with AK-47s and stuff. I mean, it's been kind of terrifying to think what a populace can do with guns.
Every government in the history of the world has been overthrown, except for the ones currently in power.
And most of them before they reach the age that we are.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
So, well, I don't know, maybe this is a different world, and maybe it's not. It's hard to tell. All right. That's the territory we're not going to... we really haven't solved anything, but it's been a good discussion, and I think that the folks on maybe not the polls, the folks at the polls, all they did in this whole discussion was get mad.
Yeah, their mind is made up and can't be changed.
Folks floating around the middle probably learned something tonight.
That's what I'm hoping.
The 9 people that ever watched this show.
I also learned that I would like to go to the range and have a range day with Julia. She's really laid back and the kind of person I like to shoot with.
I would love to shoot with you. I feel like I've seen you either at Durham County or at the range in Raleigh. You just seem so familiar to me.
Well, I've been to a lot of ranges in Raleigh. So maybe. Yeah.
And Lucas, you didn't get included only because Jeff doesn't want to get shown up by expertise.
Yeah,
I thought he was afraid I'd disqualify him or something.
No, I would like to shoot with Lucas too, but I would imagine he does a lot of shooting already. Competition shooters tend to. Yep. And don't even ask him how many rounds of ammunition he has on hand. It's the kind of thing that the mainstream media, they think 2 rifles, a handgun, and 30 rounds of ammunition is egregious. An avid shooter, their head would explode if they knew, what an average shooter, especially a competition shooter, has on hand.
I have upwards of 30 pounds of powder just in the room I'm sitting in right now.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I'm a casual shooter. I've got a closet full of ammo and another one full of guns.
I don't have any BBs left.
Can we all agree that Gary needs counseling?
I was hoping you were going to say Gary needs an AR-15.
I've got one.
I have had zero. I enjoyed the day that Jeff took me. It was interesting to learn. I've had no interest before and no interest since. Just,
Sorry, guys.
He did his best.
What did you do to him?
I think it was handguns only that day, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was from your noisy cricket up to your
22s to 500 magnums is what he's saying.
Yeah. It was interesting, and I mean, I got something abraded my knuckle of my thumb. I think So that took a while to heal. And I was wearing my glasses, so I said don't need safety glasses, and yet there weren't any shell casings that came back and hit my glasses, but there were things that came back and made little pits and ruined a pair of glasses.
Really? Oh, yeah. I never knew that.
Yep. So wear your safety goggles.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Before I was wearing goggles and was just wearing my glasses, having a hot shell casing fall between your glasses and your eye and hit your cheek, that doesn't happen more than once.
I had a crazy one time. I have on my competition gun, it's a fiber optic front sight with a little teeny tiny little fiber optic rod in it. And it broke loose when the gun recoiled, and it shot straight back and bounced off my safety glasses. And it surprised me, and it was just the weirdest thing. But yeah, definitely wear safety glasses when you're shooting, and ear protection. Guns are really, really, really loud.
And if you're a woman, do not wear a V-neck T-shirt.
I've seen them do that dance before.
Yep.
The hot breast dance.
Yep. I've done that dance.
I guess a guy either, but women are more likely to have something low cut than
guys. No, for guys it'll fall through.
Oh, okay. I get it.
There's anatomical. Ask Cindy.
Yeah. Okay.
It probably wouldn't fall through on me.
You need one of those Seinfeld bros.
Man's ear.
Well, not as. Well, that's well on its way, but not too bad yet. It's just what looks like a beer gut, but doesn't have any beer in it.
But I mean, it was still hurt once it got down there.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ones that burn the worst are the 22s. They're really hot, and they'll stick to sweat because they're not very heavy.
Yep.
Okay. Are we done here?
I think.
Let's see. Julia, I didn't take the time to put in, what was it? Oh, tree hugging gun lover. Yeah. Something like that. Tree hugging gun nut. So we going to do some more podcasts?
Yes.
Have we got you've done podcasts in the past?
I have. I need to get my mic from work and get my headphones, and I need to sit in a room that isn't my bed. Clearly you have joined me. All of our YouTube viewers have joined me in bed. Usually not that forward, but need to get closer to the router, need to get my mic. But yeah, I'll be back.
Dude, actually, the Skype has worked pretty well most of the time.
Yeah.
There's only been a little bit of a dropout, so that's pretty good. Okay, so we were going to do animals. You're dog, I'm cat. I'm cat by marriage. I love the cats. Cindy, I love the cats, but cat by marriage. You are purely dog person.
Though I gave my other cat friends a point yesterday for cats.
Yeah? What did they do?
Their mouths are tinier.
Okay, so now that I told Skype it was not doing too bad, it just broke you all up. Try that again. And she's frozen. Totally gone.
Oh, no.
Never tell Skype it's okay.
Oh, it's back.
You're back. Yeah, we lost you entirely.
It's still not working, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think you're back. And totally gone.
No, it reset. I think she's good now.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I think you're doing that intentionally because I was talking about how great dogs are.
I want to hear it again.
Yeah, go ahead and tell us your dog and cat point story.
So the cat point, I awarded it to cats because their mouths are smaller and therefore you can't smell as much of their bad breath. Dogs have gaping, stench-filled chasms that they want to share with you all the time.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but we have had cat breath. Bad cat
But
breath.
it's smaller.
Yeah,
it's a smaller hole.
but they'll put it right in your face. Okay, so we'll do some podcasts, and we can talk animals. There was a good animal story in the newspaper today that I was going to bring up, but it's getting a little bit too late. But on Meals on Wheels for Animals. Don't know if you saw the News and Observer today. Yeah, the front page story. Meals on Wheels for Animals.
I'm sure my mom will send it to me.
Yeah, because people low income, elderly, fixed income people love to have pets, especially if they're living alone. The pets their companion, but they have to make the choice. Do they eat or do the pets eat? And you tell me, if it's a choice between the person and the pet, who eats?
I'll tell you, why is it everything? I've done every job there is. I've worked with homeless population, and often it's the dog that eats first.
The animal will eat. I mean, I will get the cats to the vet on the second sneeze. I will take myself to the doctor only when I'm having to crawl because my legs aren't working anymore.
Yeah, there has to be pus for me to go.
Yep. So, okay, you'll see Julia again as much of a co-host as I can get you on the show. And Lucas, I've also wanted you to. There's Lucas. I wanted to get you on the show a lot as well, not just to steal your audience, but I do expect you to tell them all.
I did share it after we got going. I shared it with them. So
yeah. So there's your Lucas fix. It's going to have to last you for the summer.
And I need to get this out there. I'm a dog guy, and I'm a dog guy for one reason, and that is if I woke up tomorrow morning and my dog was 700 pounds, he wouldn't treat me any differently. But if I woke up tomorrow morning with a cat that was suddenly 700 pounds, I would be dinner.
Yeah, it would eat you.
There's
no question about that. It's a Triangle Tactical podcast. Plenty of reruns for people to catch up on. It is the podcast itself is for a subject that is so fraught with politics. Does not include any.
Yeah, I don't do politics.
Technology. Okay. It is technique. It is competition. I mean, you talk about people and how people can be screwed up, but in their competition. Now, you've also got a YouTube channel, and on the YouTube channel, you tend to get, you deny that it's political. It sure looked political to me.
I call it news. I will talk about news on the YouTube channel when I'm doing YouTube videos. I built this studio. I have this giant green screen wall over here. I've got the studio lights, and then I was like,
yeah, thanks for not using it.
It's kind of hard, so I haven't been doing a whole lot over there, but I'm on hiatus right now until the end of summer. My wife's due with our first child any day now. So just kind of not really doing the podcast thing right now.
Okay. So I got lucky that it hadn't happened yet.
Yes.
To get you on tonight.
Yeah. When I told her about this, she's like, well, you can do it as long as we're not like in labor. So
you could disappear at any second, even now.
Yes.
Yeah. And so as you've described it, you've been doing this show for about 6 years.
Yeah, started in May of 2012. So just a little over 6 years. I'm finally deciding to take my first summer off.
Yeah, and now you're going to do seasons. The first season lasted 6 years.
280 some episodes. And
the second season is going to be more like 6 or 8 months.
Yeah, I'm thinking like 13 episodes or so will be in season 2. And I want to really focus in on certain topics in each season. And so I think season 2 will probably be very zeroed in on match directing because that's what's interesting to me right now.
Yeah. And I will be happy to bring you back on this show as often as you want. And we don't have to talk about guns at all. Man and woman does not live by firearms alone. And I was going to say something that was more inflammatory, and I'm just going to shut my mouth. Okay. Jeffy.
Thanks for having me.
You're not a podcaster, but you have appeared on my other shows, the ham radio stuff, quite a bit.
Yeah.
And even before I was podcasting, when I was just making some random DVDs.
Yeah, it was back when we liked each other.
Yeah. 2007, we went to a big convention. And I was afraid to be on camera. I really didn't want to put myself on. I was behind the camera. You, never having been an on-camera talent before, showed that you had pure raw talent, and you were really good. I'll put a link on the website for people to see that. Now, it's a ham radio thing. No one's going to care about the content unless they're a ham. But just watch Jeff, how good a job he does.
Oh, you are too kind. Thank you.
Yeah, you're natural. And every show I've had you on, just like this one, you've been great with no particular reason to want to be or practice at doing it. So you'll be welcome back, and we can talk about other stuff too.
Okay.
because this is one of the better shows I've done. It's a break from the last two I did where it was just me monologuing to the camera. People had gone nuts on that.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, you had a co-host for a while, and you decided you liked it better by yourself.
He left, and he actually has his own podcast now. So I think we both enjoyed podcasting. We just both like doing it more separately.
All right. Well, we have a standard way of closing this show, same way I close the Old Ham Radio show.
Oh.
These guys won't know, so it'll just be you and me, and they can watch and learn. So this is the Triangle Talk Show, June 14th, 2018, episode 13, a bull session, the gun show. I'm Gary Pearce. You guys have all been identified before. Over.
And out.
And that's the end of the show. Goodbye, YouTube.
It was nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great.